Coogs House dominant. It's hard to think of any word to describe that Big 12 conference semifinal other than absolutely dominant.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs Daily Podcast, all by your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Coogs your, I don't know if at this point of the day we're your first, second, third, fourth. We are meeting you after Houston dominates BYU in the Big 12 Conference semifinals, wins 74-54. The two lowest scoring games for BYU this season were 55 points and 54 points. Those both came at the hands of your Houston Cougars. Tell me in the comments down below your thoughts on the game, what you thought of the thorough beatdown of BYU in this one. We're going to go on about and react a little bit. We're going to do some talking about the lineups, rotations, who we really like to see, and so much more. But man, oh man, what a way to go into the weekend as your Houston. Today's show is brought to you by Nissan. We got more on that fun later, but Houston was the one in the driver's seat this entire game. Got up 15-0 early, got the lead up to 22, and it hovered around 20 for most of the game. BYU got it down to 9 at one point in the second half, and Houston blew it right back out. Interestingly, Houston shot the ball better than BYU in just about every metric, but free throws, they got to free throw line a lot more, though. BYU actually had pretty good control of this game on the inside. They just refused to do it. Houston did make entry passes incredibly challenging and didn't have some great steals from the back rotations in that. Got to think that the great play of BYU inside was all thanks to a Jawan Roberts boot game. More on that later as we continue to think and react and talk about Houston beating down BYU. Got a comment coming in right here. Go Cougs. Defense was rolling from the get-go. I don't know what statistic would best display the kind of defensive dominance. I say just how long BYU went between buckets early on. Really thoroughly impressive game plan from that standpoint. Again, got up on the glass. I think by the end of the game, BYU caught up on the glass, but Houston dominated that early as well. Really just impressive performance. And I want to go on and jump on in and talk about Emanuel Sharp at a season-high 26 points in this one. I think most people's player of the game, if you were picking one, he, I guess, technically got credited with just one steal, but he also was playing incredible defense on the other end. He led Houston points. I would argue he was in the top 2 or 3 defenders on the other end for Houston, and that's mostly because of how well some other guys played. Really impressive performance out of him. 5 of 7 from deep, 7 of 7 from the stripe. Got in the lane as well. Handful of important rebounds early. I think what's interesting watching Emanuel in this tournament is a couple things. One, we know he missed stretches of the season, hurt. He also was not healthy for other stretches that he was playing. It's nice to see him being back to himself. It feels like he was, honestly kind of a missing piece at different points of the season just because he was playing with that injury and was less of a factor than we knew he was going to be. Really impressed with him tonight. I wonder, and this is totally me being the psychoanalytical guy that I sometimes I'm better than others sometimes on that, but of the Houston starting 5, you had Jawan and LJ get first team all Big 12. Milos got second team. Jojo got third team, and Emanuel got an honorable mention. And I think he got ripped off there. I wonder if he thinks he got ripped off there and is playing a little bit angry on top of it all, because you're really seeing him attack the rim with like a different ferocity in this tournament than he had in a long time. Some of that's probably health as well, but it really feels like he took that a little personally and is attacking the rim. Arabella points out here Malik Wilson also played tremendously tonight. I thought Malik Wilson was the defensive player of the game in this one. Man, that guy can fly for a rebound. He was really like skying for boards, played 29 minutes off the bench. For reference, that's more than 2 starters. Houston couldn't keep him off the floor with kind of defensive play he had. He only had 5 points, but he had 13 rebounds. 13 rebounds as a 6'2" and change guard, just flying around. He also got credited with 1 steal and 2 blocks. I thought it was 2 and 2, but I guess they're calling one of them a deflection or something. Either way, Malik Wilson flying around, throwing his body around was tremendous. And I say this every time we talk about a lot of these guys, frankly, but Malik especially. All the success could not be happening to a better guy. Just love seeing him find spots to take over games and the way he does it. He doesn't have to score a lot of points, doesn't have to get a whole lot of assists, doesn't even have to get the ball a lot. He just finds ways to impact winning. People talk about culture and sticking to it, so like that in the chat as well. Absolutely. Look, I'm telling you right now, I was more nervous at this game, I think, than the average fan was going into it. Just BYU's been hot lately, and BYU has gotten a lot better since they played Houston before, and BYU's kind of got a new coach and establishing a new system and might, have some understanding of who they are in a different kind of way. And honestly, none of that seemed to matter. As you look at how this game unfolded, it was like Houston put a stamp on this one, said circle on the calendar, was ready for this one for about a month. I don't know if it was because they felt like people kind of disrespected their way they played Colorado yesterday and talked about it being an ugly win or whatever. But Brian points out here the tone setter being Malik with the big dunk early. That was, I guess, like around the 15-minute mark there, but it felt like even early. It felt like the mark was made at warmups. It felt like Houston was playing at a different speed, in a different weight class, and was just the superior program all the way around. And I'm telling you right now, there will be teams in the NCAA tournament that BYU beats. Like, BYU is not a one-and-done team in that tournament, and Houston took it to them on a neutral floor there in Kansas City. What a freaking outing. The story, though, I think was actually, for the national audience, is probably more about what happened pregame. In pregame, we saw, I guess, leading up to the game during the day, Houston reported that Juwan Roberts would be a game-time decision. Last night, they technically never ruled him out of the game, though he never came back in after rolling his ankle. And so everyone thought there was a chance he played today. I fully discussed it on Locked On Coogs for Friday morning's episodes, assuming that he was going to be playing. If I'm being fully transparent, he's a tough guy that played through a lot more painful injuries. And then he comes out in a boot for warm-ups in this game. And truthfully, I was, again, a little concerned. I really like Keba Keita. I feel like he's the kind of guy that could play for Houston. Like, he's the kind of guy that Sampson likes as a big man. And Fasuri Toriori as the same kind of guy as well, where he could come in and play for the Kelvin Sampson kind of guy. Is definitely that kind of build. And so I thought, those guys could give Houston trouble if Roberts is out of the game or whatever. He was in a boot, did not warm up. And clearly that didn't matter in this one. Now, Houston will have the winner of Arizona and Texas Tech, and they play on the same floor after Houston. We'll be following that one a little bit closely as well. It hadn't tipped off yet, obviously, as the recording of this. For the audio audience that gets this after the fact, I kind of want to talk about that live and then put these two together. So we'll maybe get 5 or 10 minutes later this evening into the night about how Houston matches up with that opponent, and then the audio audience get them put together later. So if you listen to this on audio platforms, Locked On Coogs is free and available at wherever you get your podcast. So thank you for finding us wherever you found us. But you'll probably get both those lumped into one audio platform show later. Anyway, I wonder if Juwan Roberts is going to be more missed in the potential Tech or Arizona matchup later. But they sure didn't miss him tonight. They sure did not miss him tonight, which is crazy to think about. A first-team All-Big 12 winningest player in college basketball history kind of guy, and they didn't really miss him in a game, in a conference semifinal game. Now, part of that, again, is we mentioned all the scoring out of Sharp and Cryer and the guards. Small ball worked really, really well. And I'll talk about what I thought worked so well for that group, the small ball group, in a second. But before we get too far, I mentioned that today's show is brought to you by Nissan. We're all about stats here at Locked On Sports, Locked On Podcast Network, because numbers tend not to lie. They tell it like it is. And when it comes to all new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP kind of level. The ability to tote 8,500 pounds. It can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear, all those sneakers and everything, wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin turbo V6 engine. That's big. Delivering with strength and performance, able to handle highways, back roads, everything in between. Room for up to 8 people. The Nissan Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights. And all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. Also brought to you today by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, and who's coming down the net. You can get in on the game, live in-game action, easy app, quick payouts, all the good things there. Visit FanDuel.com, get on the college hoops action all tournament long. Parker Ranger, Locked On Coogs here, and we're looking at Houston and BYU with a Houston beatdown of the Blue Cougars in the conference semifinals. Now, I will say we're keeping an eye for when Arizona and Texas Tech starts. We might get 10 or so minutes out in a reaction to what the Houston matchup will look like later on in the late night, early morning time, whenever that happens. But honestly, right now, it's easy to just sit here and bask in what a freaking performance by Houston. We've got people talking in the comments of who they'd rather play. I'm going to kind of keep a tally on that. We'll see what we got going later. Right now, I think Arizona is the team. It looks like people would rather play, but without digressing too terribly far, I do want to talk about this small ball lineup Houston started the game with, and ultimately Houston kind of ran with for stretches of the game because, I think it would have been easy to start Javier and Jojo or do some big lineup, maybe even bring in something like that, right? And ultimately Houston came out with 4 guards and let Terrence kind of be their versatile flex forward. We play some guard stuff, does some forward stuff, etc. And they played Malik Wilson in the same spot. Malik dominated his role tonight, as we mentioned in the first segment. And what they did with the 4 guards was they actually used Jojo Tugler's athleticism, which made me think he could play some 4 tonight, and made it like a crazy spread out game and put Tugler out beyond the 3-point line, setting screens and handing hard rolls and things like that. And they did what we call 45 cuts. I want to drop a little bit of what that is. Well, I've got my board here, but they'd have a couple different guard options. And then Jojo Tugler would be setting a fairly high ball screen. Okay. When the ball coming right here on the board, you'd have the one guy in the domino set come across, pop up, loop down to get some action going out of Houston there. And then as they come off the screen, Jojo Tugler dives hard to the near side block. That takes away some defense. You also could have defense collapsing from the play side as the ball dribbled down here. It really put the defense in quite a bind in this one, especially I noticed when they ran some of that side pick and roll stuff and they put LJ Cryer in the corner that the screen was happening on, because it meant that guy could not tag the roller from the backside and left a lot of stuff open on the front side. Really, really intriguing stuff out of Kelvin and taking advantage of the 4-guard lineup in this one. And ultimately, it was great for Houston because BYU was so content shooting threes that they weren't able to punish Houston on the other end for being smaller. And if they're going to do that, you're going to see guards having the kind of night they had tonight, where Emanuel Sharp had 26, LJ Cryer had 20, and Milos Uzan had 14. And I don't teach math, but that is 60 points between the three of them, and BYU's whole team had 54, right? That's the story of the game here. Houston's starting backcourt was able to outperform everything BYU had, and that it was simply because they couldn't keep up with them in space and couldn't keep up with the pace. Houston plays an incredibly slow pace in terms of possessions per game, but in each possession is working and grinding and full speed ahead in all of that one. Now, I was really impressed by the performance there. I think Terrence is kind of getting dogged a little bit on the line, and I don't know that that's necessarily fair. He played just 22 minutes. He had a shot blocked at the rim here. He didn't make a three. He was 0-1 from the foul line. His defense, I do think, is a difference maker still. He's able to guard a lot of different positions. And so while he's like kind of in and out of the game as far as offense goes throughout the season, and this was more of the out of the game kind of night for him, he defends well to be in the game. The reason he played just 22 minutes to me is really more about how well Malik was playing, right? Kind of doing the same positional stuff. And so if Malik's on fire, he gets to stick in and keep the minutes, right? That's part of the way that the game goes. Minutes are a finite thing. And so, I don't mean to say that you got to be super nice to guys all the time. There's certain criticisms that are certainly okay. But also, part of the reason Terrence didn't play was really more about someone else. And so I just make sure we keep like perspective taking there. Terrence is going to help us win games in March, I promise. Guy's an important and good basketball player. Other important good basketball players we hadn't talked about yet is Milos Uzan. Pretty clean sheet from the transfer point guard. No turnovers, 5 assists, 14 points. In a Big 12 conference semifinal, I mean, what else could you want, man? I really liked how aggressive he was when it was his turn to score. You're getting downhill off those screens. He did sometimes what we would call a snake dribble, where he like first goes off the screen to his left and then quickly cuts under the drop defender back to the right and kind of puts that guy in jail for a second and kind of makes him freeze. He did that snake dribble. Chris Paul does a lot. He's kind of like the most famous NBA guy for it or whatever. Certainly like the last millennial generation of basketball players. And Milos did that really well a few different times. I thought kind of put Keba Keita in a bad spot. Loved those kinds of actions out of him on Friday night. Now, Houston will play in the Big 12 championship game on Saturday night, and then they have a big Selection Sunday kind of ordeal on Sunday. Now that last year that was a deal where like Drake came and watched. I don't think they're having Drake come by anytime soon after all the kind of stuff that I don't think Drake wants to do anything with City with America these days. But I will say that as they get ready for Selection Sunday, this is the kind of performance that sticks out in committees' minds, right? Yes, it is a quad one win. You're beating a top 25 team on a neutral floor in an important game, right? Those things all matter. But the way you did it from a qualitative perspective is going to be heavy on people's minds as they're like making decisions on what line to put people on and those kinds of things. I think Houston's probably got the one seed locked up anyway, but that might have just put the nail in the coffin without whatever happens tomorrow night. Remember last year, Houston got to the Big 12 Conference Tournament Championship game, ran out of gas in that one. It didn't seem to matter as far as their seeding goes. I'd imagine you're looking at more of that this year. Now, I don't think this team's going to like lay down in the conference championship game or anything either, but I do think that on the whole, it looks like to me that team's kind of locked up a one seed after this evening. Now, I don't know if Joe Roberts play on the championship game on Saturday night. I do know that looking at these chats here, it looks kind of like people might want to play Arizona from a easier win perspective, easier game perspective, which is interesting to me. I think they're a really good basketball team, but people are also pointing out that beating Tech means you kind of win a rubber match against Tech, and there's some rivalry there. So hit us in the comments down below. Tell us which one you feel like. Like I said, we're going to be back with some more content, short, 8-10 minutes, something like that, later once that game between Arizona and Texas Tech goes final, to talk about Houston matching up with one of them. The game just started. Arizona's up 3-0, so we got some time before that comes out. But hit subscribe and hit the bell so you know we're live on YouTube. We'll be live after the game and live after the championship game on Saturday night as well. Locked On Coogs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every single day heading into Selection Sunday, especially. Go Coogs.